Welcome back to Season 2, Episode 2, where this episode is all about growing your city. We are still in our infancy stage with just 3,000 population, and our immediate goal is to raise our bank by improving our weekly income. We were able to keep moving forward with the use of dirt roads, but we can't run on dirt roads forever. We'll need shiny asphalt roads and large buildings to make our city nice and pretty for tourists to visit. The best possible way to earn income in Cities Skylines is to fully utilize the industry's DLC. As a vanilla player, I consider Industries DLC to be the best and must-have DLC for any vanilla player. Not only does it provide a massive weekly income, but it also replaces the use of the ugly generic yellow industries or the mass zoning of offices throughout your city. The city, however, currently have no demands for any industry. Instead, our focus will be to provide zoning for more residential areas. While we're preparing these residential areas, it is immensely important to keep in mind the other crucial needs for your citizens. What you constantly need to keep in check when you create your district layout is to provide areas for death care, education, and garbage facilities. For instance, in this area, I am preparing a high school accompanied with elementary schools. And in this area, I will place down a cemetery. Having large gaps in your city can be advantageous in providing spaces for these large buildings. Notice how we are not directly zoning anything on the main 4-lane road. Instead, I have zoned the commercial on one side of the next road closest to the main road. If you need other commercial areas, try to zone furthest away from the main road so the noise pollution will not be too concentrated in one area. The reason why we avoid zoning on the main road is because that is where you should expect majority of the traffic within your city. It makes complete sense on why residential are not zoned in main roads. And the reason why you avoid zoning commercial on these roads is because not only are there traffic passing through, but there are also trucks that will need to make stops to deliver goods. Therefore, the added traffic of trucks stopping will cause further traffic in your main road. We have just passed the 3,800 population to reach the busy town milestone. There isn't anything in particular noteworthy with this milestone, therefore we will continue to prepare zoning for our district. We need just a little more than 2,000 population to be able to zone high-density buildings. So I will prepare a standard grid layout for our European high-density zone buildings that tend to have empty flat sides. Therefore, they are better suited to be zoned side by side on a straight road instead of having gaps when zoned on curved roads. I could override these European buildings by making them into self-sufficient high-rise green cities. However, the base game of this map is European. Therefore, we will respect the base theme and fully utilize the European buildings in their own special way. If we wanted high-rise zoned buildings, then we should have been playing on a temperate, boreal, or tropical map. The drawback on European base theme high density buildings are that the height of the buildings, regardless of their level, will always remain medium sized. They will never get taller to become a high-rise building, unlike the counterpart themes of temperate, boreal, and tropical. Nevertheless, I do have some interesting design ideas on how to take advantage of the European theme. These low-density residential buildings here will be replaced once we unlock the high-density buildings. These buildings will then have to be demolished. However, they will be replaced with high-density residential, which will more than make up for the low density that was replaced. This large gap will also be reserved for our first generic university when it becomes available with the high-density zoning. Since our demands are somewhat flatlined, I will start decorating this area with trees. Trees are the highlight of your city. It's what makes your city look alive. I will let the game run until the next major event occurs that will require my commentary. This area will be reserved for more high-density zoning as we draw closer to the next milestone. To avoid making a perfect grid, try to curve your roads ever so slightly. Even that slight curve will make a huge difference in your standard grid layout. It's still a grid, but at least it's not a perfect grid, which makes it more unique and beautiful. The only thing constant in our next grid area, or in fact in all our succeeding grids, is the 1 unit gap between the main road and the commercial zoned buildings. Everything else in the new grid you can diversify by making different interior gap lengths, which can be used for park areas. The dashed lines in the map indicate the border of our build area, and it is time to go across and start developing our farming industry. Take note, however, that I do not tend to stress myself with a design layout until I have unlocked all the buildings in the industry area that we are working on. It's just completely pointless to consider positioning level 1 buildings, then rearrange the entire layout when you reach the max level industry. Our very simple farming industry area is now ready. However, you should always still follow the most in demand in your city, which is currently residential. If by any chance all 3 demands are equal, then you should always pacify their needs in the order of residential, commercial, then industry. I will let the simulation run until we start adding farm buildings. Again, don't mind the lack of creativity when starting our farming area. The farm layout and explanation deserves its own separate short episode. For the meantime, our goal for this episode is to simply reach level 5 farming while developing our residential and commercial areas. All this area needs are generic highway exits, which will be replaced when we have our maxed out level 5 farming. And take a look at our current population, which is nearly 6,000, that would unlock high density zoning. To quickly level up your industry area, all you need are more processing buildings. Regardless of how many extractor buildings you have, it's the produced resources and number of workers that will upgrade your industry to the next level. Therefore, invest your bank to purchasing the processing buildings, which are animal pastures at level 1. You may have some extractor crop fields, yet you may eventually notice that your farm will still prefer importing goods. Let's not forget about the elder and childcare buildings that would help extend the lifespans of our citizens. These structures are immensely important in your future high-density residential areas. And of course, let's not forget about death care in this area. Ultimately, you will need to add education, and the cycle repeats itself in every new district that you create. On the corner of the map is already reserved for a garbage facility. Notice how I intentionally did not create a road layout in the corner because I anticipate pollution from the garbage area. And finally, we are a big town which unlocks high density buildings. It is now time to start replacing the low density in the grid area for high density buildings. However, we simply cannot just dezone the low density then rezone as high density because the entire district is set for self-sufficient buildings. Therefore, I will create a new district that is limited to the areas within the grid, and the new district will then have no self-sufficient building settings and will thus construct the basic high-density European buildings. We will be expanding our new district slowly yet surely. Technically, when you dezone the low density area, it will count as a death wave. Therefore, do not rezone too quickly. Be patient and watch your residential demands and wait for the buildings to be constructed in the grid area. And we also have enough money to purchase our very first generic university. When we reach a certain population is when we start to replace the generic university with the campus DLC buildings. I will continue to expand our new district area until such a time when I need to explain something new. You will notice that I just zoned the high density commercial near the low density residential, which will cause them to complain of noise pollution. Not to worry, for I intend to dezone that area to place in our first monorail station. Now I will be creating a new district area that will still have the self-sufficient residential building settings, but it will convert the commercial into local and organic produce. I simply like the building models of these commercial structures as my low-rise buildings. Notice how I am tracing over the district area, which dezones the commercial to rebuild while our low density residential are unaffected. You may think that it would be easier to simply change the settings of the current district area. However, that would cause a mass dezone of all the commercial buildings that you have zoned. Remember that we are doing our best to be careful and patient. It is so easy to get lazy and careless. Let's not do that to our citizens. At this point, I will let the simulation run as you witness me rezoning our grid area while adding farm buildings which are required to reach the next level. We are going to get close and personal to remedy a few mishaps in our build. One in particular are the European zoned buildings in the corner that is misbehaving. A proper corner should look like this. So to go about fixing this area, that is because it is a cracked corner. And to fix this without having to demolish an entire block is all you gotta do is delete that corner and of course delete the buildings next to it, then rebuild that road from the corner back to the road, and that should be fixed. So as you can see, that is the proper corner that you're looking for. If you reattach it from the road to the corner, the crack will return, so do not do it that way. And that is how you fix cracked corners. And of course, all you gotta do is just rezone everything and make sure to delete the old buildings, and that should repair itself. And the next thing that I want to do while we're at this view is I'm going to go ahead and prepare the second station or second mode of transportation that we will have in the city which is a monorail. So I am going to place her right there, and we need to move some buildings. I'm going to place that there, and of course they are not too happy of that, so we are going to dezone all the low density. And while we're here, notice the red circle, which is the noise pollution, and it doesn't reach this area. So I miscomputed the distance or the radius or circumference of that. And we are level 3 of our farming. I will visit that in a while, and we're going to take advantage of that and zone this into high density residential. So we are just preparing ahead, and we are going to fix traffic problems before they become a problem by adding in our transportation line. And there we are. There, that is good. And lastly, while we're at this view, I'm going to take the opportunity to decorate within the blank spaces of our block here. And this was completely intentional, to have a 4-unit space in between that, because a park takes up to 4 spaces, so I need 5-unit distance to make our pathway here and place in our park. Where is that? And it should fit like a glove, precisely as that. And we're not going to use the same thing in the middle. Instead, we're going to use a different park. That will be completely up to you, and you don't necessarily need to attach it to the pathway. And there you go, you have an instant park within your block. And also, I am going to delete buildings that I do not like. For example, since we are using this as a view, you'd want buildings with windows, and you want them to be attaching to the side. So for instance, these guys, they have a flat rear, and we do not want that. We want buildings with windows at the back end, and then we are going to make them historical. If you do not know what historical does, that makes the building not allow the building to level up, or actually it will level up, but the model will not change. So I will delete these, so they will continue to level up, but the model will remain the same. As you can see, that's not looking too good. These guys, good. And there you go. I will continue to do this in a time lapse, because you do not need to see this. All right, I will catch you guys later. Now that looks like a decent looking interior. We could also be more intimate by adding in some vanilla assets, such as this. And you gotta love the view of those windows. It is much better than staring at a wall. I believe that we have all the required uh, produced goods in order to upgrade or reach the final level of our farm here. So all we need now are just more farm buildings, because what we need are workers. As you see, we just need more workers. So we have more than enough produced resource, and we're just gonna go ahead and add those buildings. And also we need to increase our tax, because that is one thing I missed to do. And lastly, we also need to start emptying this side here. So I will put in these guys so that in a future episode this would be transferred elsewhere. And let's increase tax to the maximum 12%. I actually forgot to do that, but we are still doing fine. Well, there we go. And while we wait for this to reach the, oh wait, actually we did not put in workers. That would help if we had those buildings. Yeah, most definitely. So I'm just gonna throw them down and we will arrange them in the next episode. And now we could actually start upgrading the roads here, at least. And finally, we have reached level 5 of our farming industry, and we're a little over 30 minutes of our episode, so it is time to wrap up. We want our minds and attention fresh when we do our industry layout, therefore that will be in a separate episode in itself and will just be all about farming. You know what? I am just going to paint over the entire area and have the low density commercial reconstruct themselves. As long as it's not high density commercial, we should be able to recover decently. It's not residential areas, so our death wave should not be affected. We nearly have 2 million in the bank, ending with up to 10,000 weekly income at a 10,000 population. We didn't finalize the design of our farming industry, but this episode still hit its goal to have an efficient bank, and it should be smooth sailing from here. Have you been building along? Have you embraced the freeform road tool? And how did you like the parks that we built in the European inner blocks? Let me know, your opinion counts. Write your comments down below on what you like and dislike about the video. Until then, this is Captain Obvious, and I hope to see you again in the next episode.